was your most memorable trip to a live professional sporting event, and what made it so memorable for you?
It's got to be the Swedish Elite Lopp. When 30,000 people at the grandstands and all cheering and hollering, that's an experience everyone should enjoy.
I went to Chicago Stadium, the old Chicago Stadium. That was the loudest, supposedly the loudest fan club in the world, and they were right. I was there to see the Leafs play the Blackhawks. My sister lived in Chicago. I'm a Leafs fan. So it was great. It was awesome. It was the loudest place I've ever been in my life, before and after, and my Leafs lost, as usual.
I went to the Super Bowl, I think it was 2010, in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was amazing. And we went on the Bud plane. A friend of mine won tickets at Boston Pizza, and it was just an incredible experience. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend 4 days in Phoenix, Arizona, watching the Super Bowl, among many other things?
I went and seen the Toronto Raptors play once, and that was very enjoyable. I was pleasantly surprised. There's nonstop action. Even when the game isn't on, they're doing something, and keeps you interested.
I'd have to say the first time I got to go to the Leafs game live. You know, that's always a kid's dream, and it's something I always will remember.
Probably my first Little Brown Jug, back in '87, I believe, and just the crowd of people and the atmosphere was really nice.
I went to see Detroit Red Wings play in the playoffs once. I enjoyed it, even though they lost, but it was still, because it was the first time I got to see them live, it's my favorite hockey team, so that was a lot of fun.
Probably in Edmonton, going to the Stanley Cup final Game 6 when Edmonton played Carolina. I just moved out there a few years before that and become a Edmonton Oiler fan, and to go to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final was pretty exciting for me.
I think it had to be first time, I would say, the Little Brown Jug. I went to the Little Brown Jug. I couldn't believe the crowd and just the atmosphere, and it was incredible.
Probably a Super Bowl event. I went in Florida years ago, you know, and there was a great, I'm a big NFL fan, so it was a great day for me, you know, to watch a good. I had great tickets too, so to watch a Super Bowl game live was a great thrill for me.
We had a box at actually it was Maple Leaf Gardens when the Leafs made it to the conference final, and probably one game we had the box for was against St. Louis Blues, and it was the game that Doug Gilmour scored the winning goal in like double overtime or triple overtime, and that was just an unbelievable game.
Probably in 1989 when I went down to the Hamiltonian. It was a dead heat in the final, and that would have to be my biggest thrill, I guess.
Probably the Blue Jays 1993 World Series when Joe Carter hit his home run.
I remember when the Montreal Canadiens win in '93. I was at the Forum back then in Montreal when they beat the LA Kings. I was there. I think it was the third game. I think, I'm not sure, when Marty McSorley got caught with the illegal stick, and it changed the series around. And I was there at that game. It was pretty cool.
Actually, to the UFC in Montreal, it was awesome seeing George St. Pierre fight in his hometown, and the crowd was unbelievable for that.
I went to the first time that Ireland ever qualified for the Soccer World Cup was in Italy in 1990, and the first game they played was against England. It was in Sardinia, and I flew over with my dad on a charter right in that morning and out that night, and I was only 14 years old, and it was you know, England and Ireland is a big deal, and at that time they had played a little bit the few years before that, and there was quite a rivalry going on, and it was intense. It was I'll never forget it. It was pretty intense.
I went to the Summer Olympics in England and went to some events down there, and that was amazing.
I think winning the Gold Cup and Saucer in PEI, that's where I grew up, and it's just so traditional there. I won the Maple Leaf Trot in Ontario and the Horseman's Trot, but the Gold Cup and Saucer really stands out, and I'm sure you've been there, and it's just a very special moment.
Slave Dream and then at Ray at the Meadowlands.
You couldn't top that.
Well, hockey is my forte, and I think maybe actually playing my first hockey game in Chicago Stadium was my memorable event.
My memorable trip to anywhere was actually when I was paddocking a horse at Woodbine a couple years ago now, that high def Z-Tam. We won the preferred that night, and that was my most memorable night.
Yeah, I had a horse winning 49-4 that I owned and trained in Woodbine.
When I was younger, my parents used to take us to Olympic Stadium in Montreal to watch the Expos, and I don't know, it was just very impressive. There was actually nobody in the stands ever, but we were younger and it was just fun. I like baseball, so it was fun to watch.
Going to Fenway Park every year with my brother, July 4th.
There's two. I went to the Pittsburgh Washington game for my bachelor party. It was awesome, bunch of guys, and we took a band down. It was a great time. Or we also went to the Winter Classic this year, and that's memorable because it was the coldest day in the history of Earth. So so that was good, but it was a great game. Just horrible conditions.
Well, recently I went to the Winter Classic game in Detroit, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Detroit and Toronto. And that was probably as cold as I've ever been in my life. So I'll never forget that. My feet were just like ice bricks. But anyway, we had a great time. It was a great result, and I'll never forget it.
My daughter and I went to the Montreal Forum. They were going to tear it down. There was only, I think, 3 or 4 games left. And we went down to watch the Montreal Canadiens play.
I'd say Game 3, Pittsburgh Penguins and Detroit Red Wings. Me and my brother went down, and we have a connection on the team in Pittsburgh at the time, so it was pretty cool.
Actually, the preseason game with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres. A good friend of mine, Tim Murray, now is the new GM of the Buffalo Sabres, and at the time he wasn't. But that was when all the Toronto players beat the crap out of the Buffalo Sabres. It was a preseason game too, and I was right there to witness it. It was fabulous.
You know what? I've been to mostly all the sports. I really like going to the MMA. I went to the UFC quite a number of times in New Jersey, Toronto, Montreal, Las Vegas, and just the energy in the buildings. It's unbelievable. You know, it's not like I don't go to the gym that often, so it's not like I train in MMA. But when you realize the amount of hours and work and time that these people put into, they don't really put their life on the line for the most part, but they put everything they work hard for on the line every time they go in the cage. And, when you fight and, if you lose, you don't really make that much money, and you win, you don't really make that much money, but as you win more, it really is a really tough sport. I mean, to hear some of the stories that these guys went through, I mean, you really grow to appreciate the athleticism and the stories behind them. So I think, to be honest, you could spin that around on our industry too. There's a lot of great stories in this industry, and that's what draws people to sports, I think. And I never really understood it until I don't even know who said it. They're just the sports stories of how the people got to where they are, how the horses got to where they are, how the fighters got to where they are. It really draws people in. So I have quite a fondness for the sport and the people that are in it, yeah.